All right, I'm going to start up then. The syllabus very much mocks the one that we went over this morning, so there's really nothing new on it. All right. Again, as it says, we're transitioning. We're actually making two transitions here. We're transitioning, of course, from Java, just Java, to Android. Plus, we're transitioning. Starting now, we're going to be using Android Studio for the rest of the semester. I heard a little bit of the talk that Luke was having with John Wanda before, and yeah, Google owns Android. Google are the ones who have basically said all new development work should be done in Android Studio. What you're going to find when we get into it, it doesn't look much different. All right, it doesn't look much different than Eclipse, but some of the stuff is going to be different. Now, just so you know, if last semester, and you were all in the class last semester, but if last semester you created a virtual desktop and you created it in Eclipse, keep it. It's a pain in the ass to try to create the emulator, simulator, whatever the hell it is. It's a pain in the ass to create that in Android Studio with the setup we have. It doesn't seem to play real nice with it. All right, so I had to go back because I thought, well, I'm going to be way ahead of the curve. So I removed it. I removed the emulator. And then I had to go back into Eclipse again to create it so I could get out of Eclipse so I could get into Android Studio so I could use it. So you've been told. All right, the other thing, too, is after the break today, we are going to have, John's going to kind of take over. He didn't know that. But he's going to kind of take over, and everybody's going to get a tablet. We're going to hook up the tablets and make sure, even if we do a simple Hello World or whatever type of program, that you're all able to do that. All right? And my recommendation then is from then on, that you have it, you bring, that'll be open and just grab a tablet every time you come in. All right? So, you already know about the book, so I'm not going to say anything more about it. There will not be 8 assignments. I don't know how many there will be. All right? You can read the competencies as you get the time. I'll leave them up there for a second. And just like I told you this morning, we are now told we are mandated to put a cell phone policy on our syllabus. So there is one on there that says you're supposed to either have your cell phone off or put on vibrate when the class is going on, even if you're expecting a really important phone call from a future son-in-law. All right? Even in that case. All right. And finally, again, we're supposed to say this. Now, I will say this, and I mentioned this earlier. Some people who are in this room have different kinds of issues. I'm not going to kick anybody who's a second-year student out for this, just so you know. All right? The only way that you won't pass the class is if you don't do the work. But you all know you've got your own special circumstances. All right? So as long as you get the work done, you'll pass the class. If you get the work done on time, all right, or around the time it's basically assigned and due, you'll get a better grade than if you turn it in late. All right, if that's a real surprise to you, then I'm surprised. All right, any questions on any of that stuff? All right, then if we take a look over here, this is what's in there. Again, I found a bunch of articles on different stuff with Android. I know Luke was mentioning this morning, I don't mean to put him on the spot, but he was talking about Android architecture. And I found an article on the architecture that I liked a little better than what was even mentioned in the book. So that's out there. There are a bunch of articles on Android and associated things out there. All right. The source code from your book is out there. The syllabus is out there. Now, and for some reason, this isn't letting me open anything, and I don't know why, but I put a folder out there this morning that's called Wenderlich. If you remember, one of the sites that I had talked to you about, not in this class, but in the iOS class, was RayWenderlich.com. This is basically, when you start to look through it, this is basically a Swift site. All right, basically. However, if I go up to the top of the site and in the search, I put in Android. Notice there's a bunch of different Android things in there and a bunch of things for beginners. All right, if I go to the Getting Started with Android Development, if I come up to it, that isn't the one I wanted to show you. I don't know which one it is now. Doggone it. I think it's this one. Yeah. Beginning Android Development. They have both in there an introduction to Android Studio, which is about 30 pages long. And they have another one that's called Installing Android Studio, which is about the same size. You don't have to worry about going out there and getting those because that's what I put here. So those two articles are there. I have not read them. I just found them this morning. I'm going to read them between now and Thursday. And if I think there's anything relevant in there that's not really discussed in the book, we will go over them at that time. All right? What I kind of like is, I think it was in here. I think it's the second one. Not the installing, it's the other one. What they have you do in here is they have you build a project, and it's kind of neat. All right, you might look at it and say, "Oh my God," but I thought it was kind of neat. So, and since when you all are teachers, then you can teach whatever the hell you want. How's that? But someplace in here, come on, I'm going down. Where is it? There it is. It's the equivalent of a Magic 8-Ball app, but they put a little spin on it. You all know what the old Magic 8-Ball is? You know, you'd ask it a question, you'd shake it, you'd turn it upside down, it would give you an answer. All right? Well, this one, you basically just ask the question to yourself, you click the button that says, "What's my fortune?" and it gives you that result here. All right? Which I thought was kind of cool. In fact, I wouldn't mind building this one both in here and building it in iOS, just so we can see some of the differences, some of the similarities between the two languages. But of course, knowing me, that's not enough. So after we go through this, whether we build this one or not as a class, I don't know yet. But after we go through this, I'm going to ask you to create it, but I don't like the way it's created right now. So you'll make changes to it. All right? We'll talk about that when we get to that point. All right, so that's in there. And again, like I said, a bunch of articles. This was kind of cool. I think this is the one. It's an IntelliJ ID. It's a shortcut for some of the stuff that we have in Android Studio. Hear that? This is right from your book. I don't even know if I showed that to you, John. I did this during the break. These are shortcuts that you can use in Android Studio. All right? And it's out there on the P drive under the class, but it's under IntelliJ IDEA reference card. Okay? All right. I'm going to take it that there's no questions on any of that, so I'm going to open up the book. There it is. You may or may not have noticed the books that we have for this class and the class that follows this, they're written by the same author. I have not read a bio from him just mainly because I don't care. But I believe he's English because he'll say whilst a lot. He says things that are more, in that part of the world. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. What I wanted to tell you, though, is this book has in it 58 chapters. 55 chapters, I think it is. All right? The iOS book has almost double that. The iOS book has like 108 chapters. All right? Are we going to go over every single chapter in this book? It may surprise you. I hope so. All right? My goal is, in this week, between now and the end of this week, to go through, because I've already got it all marked up and etc. in my book. So this week, we're going to get through about the first 10 chapters. Now, you're going to find that a lot of the stuff that's in there is review. All right? But what you're also going to find, I've read the whole book. All right, or basically the whole book. I don't know, I'm on like chapter 40 something or other. And what you're going to find is a lot of the stuff that's in there is going to be review, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's new. All right? So, taking it from the top, you can see, and I'm not going to sit there and read the table of contents to you, but again, we're going to go through this today. The setting up the Android development environment, it's already set up for you, so you don't have to. I will tell you that if you haven't looked through the book at all yet, what this guy does, this author, is he'll show you how to do something, and almost always, I don't know how much you've looked at it, John, but almost always, then the author will say, and if you want to do it from the command line, you do it like this. So if you are a command line person, and sometimes people are, he shows you how you can set up your emulators and do a bunch of other stuff, like literally from a command line. All right, so that chapter, even though it's pretty long, we won't spend much time on it. I'd like to do this creating an example app because it shows some of the differences between using Eclipse and Android Studio. It's a real simple app. Literally, all you do is you go in there and you remove the hello world, you put a different message in there, and then you change the background color. So you might say, well, why are we doing that then? Because there's a few things that are in there that were not available under Eclipse rather, and I'd like you to see them. All right, so we'll do that. Then the tour of the user interface, creating the Android virtual device. Again, unless you found a fix to that. Yep. All right, you did. Okay, then we can do that. But if you do have an AVD from last semester, it will work fine because mine did. All right. Then when we get to chapter 6, that's when we actually bring out the real devices. All right. Then notice chapter 7 are on the basics of the editor. Chapter 8 is Luke's favorite chapter. It's an overview of the Android architecture. All right. Chapter 9 is the anatomy of an application. And chapter 10 is on the Android application and activity cycles. I'd like to get through at least that much this week. And don't get me wrong, it's like, what are we going to do 10 chapters a week for 5 weeks? No. But much of the stuff that's in the first 10 chapters is either review or it's fairly intuitive in nature. All right? I would like to, if at all possible, get through around. So if we get through 10 chapters this week, that means we have how many left? I can't remember if they said there's 50-something in here. 58. So if we get through, let's say we get through 11, chapter 11. All right, that means that we'd have what, like 47 chapters left. All right, so I'd like to do at least 5 chapters a week. And even if it sounds like a lot, the average chapter size in here is 6 or 7 pages. They're not long chapters. 58 chapters, and the book, 609 pages. Do the math. And that's including the index, which is really, really long, and the table of contents. All right, I think there's 575 actual pages in here. With 58 chapters, that ends up being less than 10 pages per chapter. All right. And the first chapter basically has nothing in it. All right. The author does tell you that basically one of his goals in here is to take somebody who has programming knowledge but has no knowledge of Android whatsoever and teach them Android development. All right. Teach you the skills necessary to develop Android-based apps. All right. I don't want to sit there and read from the stuff that's in here. The code is already out there. I think I mentioned this. I did not go into Blackboard, but the Blackboard thing is set up virtually the same as what's on your P drive. All right. The author had said if you have purchased the book, then you can download an e-copy, and that's what I had. In fact, what happened, if you didn't hear the story from last semester, I contacted them because I said, hey, I'm going to use both your books, and I'm already ordered both of, I've already ordered the Android, but unfortunately I ordered the iOS 8 book instead of the iOS 9 because those goofuses at Amazon didn't say there was a newer version coming out. And they got back to me. They were really good about getting back, and they said, hey, cool, we're sending you a free book, and we're also sending you links to the PDFs. What they asked, though, was, we are a money-making thing, so you really should only be sharing the PDFs with people who have bought the book. All right? I didn't share anything. It's possible that somehow that was out there, but I don't know. All right. That's it for Chapter 1. Again, not really anything in it. All right. Chapter 2 talks about if you want to set up the environment. You have to set up the JDK first, which is already on your machines, and they show how to do it on a Windows machine versus doing it on a Mac, versus doing it on a Linux box. And then they talk about downloading the entire Android Studio package. I'm going to recommend, because there was a lot of tweaking that went on between Adrian and John and getting all this stuff to work, that unless we have major problems with a virtual desktop where you can't use it at home, that's not happened before, that you use the virtual desktop, whether you're here or whether you're at home. Because some people say, well, I have really slow connection, so I download all the software. Yeah, but this should work. That's all I can tell you. So they show you how to install Android Studio, all right, both on Windows, again on the Mac, and again on Linux. All right, they walk you through the wizard and everything that you have to do. Notice, remember that page from last year? You're going to see the same stuff. We're going to take a look at the same stuff that we looked at before. All right? And you never told me, is there a perspective in this? Is there, like we had, when we set up the perspective and stuff?
No.
Okay, because I didn't know if we had to worry about doing that or not, so. All right. Again, as I mentioned, he shows you how to do almost everything that you can do from a command line. He shows you how to do it from the command line. All right? So far, I would tell you that there's really about 2 things from this book that I don't like. And I'm very, very quickly just going to show you what both of them are. You may or may not agree with what I'm about to say. All right? The one thing is, they're really related to one another, but the one thing is, what the author decided to do, if you take a look at the source code that's out here, is he doesn't have the things that they're listed alphabetically, but they're not by chapter. Now maybe that's picky Annie, but I don't like that. All right. And second, many of the programs that are in here are really, really simplistic in nature. I wish they'd been a little bit, bit more complex than what he's shown. All right. All right, so let's just jump into chapter 3, and let's do this right now as a class. If you're not into the virtual desktop, please get into it right now. All right, I will get into it, and we're going to start up Android Studio. And I want my book because I won't have the PDF now. If you are following along in the book, I'm on page 17. What you'll notice is you've got it, they're right next to each other on my screen here. There's Eclipse, there's Android Studio. I've got a shortcut to both so you can see the difference. Make sure again that you're bringing up Android Studio, that you're not bringing up Eclipse. If you don't see it there, click your Start, and hopefully it'll be up there at the top. All right, otherwise you might have to search for it through your old programs. I don't know. But if I start it up and you look on screen, of course there's a different splash screen you get at the beginning. But you're going to notice when we start doing this, it doesn't look that different than Eclipse. Yours may take a while. The first time I loaded mine on, it literally took about a minute or two. So if it takes a little bit of time, don't worry about it at all. We're not in any hurry.
Luke doesn't have Android Studio on his virtual.
On his virtual, or is it on?
No, he's on his virtual.
It's got the folder for it, but then you open it, it
Yeah,
says
nothing's
empty.
there.
Well, it's up to you. Either I can run up there during break, or you can run up there now and see if Terry or Adrian are up there. They can probably do it right from their desk.
Yeah, I'll go up and see if they can.
Do I need to shut the time?
Well, before you do, let's check. Anybody else who couldn't get into Android Studio or had a problem with Android Studio?
I just want to take his machine number
Don't worry, I've already started doing some of the programs, so if I've got stuff up here that you don't worry about it. All right? So last time, everybody has been able to get into Android Studio other than Luke, correct? Going. He's gone. All right. All right. Do you remember how what we have done in the past is, in fact, I may have even had you do it last semester. We went out onto our virtual desktop, and we created a folder called Android. Everybody remember that? Don't do that anymore. The folder you're going to use, put it out on your H drive. That's what John recommends. Now, if you say, but I can't, Jeff, I've already using all 500 meg on my H drive, then you better move some of the stuff that's out there. I had to do the same thing. And I had nothing on my virtual desktop. I cleaned everything off, and it still wasn't working. And then Adrian said, try saving your stuff and moving it over to your H drive. And I did it, and it worked just fine. All right? So all I'm saying is, go over to your H drive, and on your H drive, create a folder. Notice I've already got one in here that's called Android. You can call it Android. You can call it 152, 156. I don't care. All kidding aside, just call it something so that it's easy for me to be able to, take a look at what's in there. Now, it's up to you, bless you, it's up to you whether or not you want to put a completed folder in there or not put a completed folder in there. The way I'm looking at it is this way. You won't have an assignment in this class this week, but let's just pretend that you did. So let's pretend that Wednesday I gave you your first assignment and I said it was due on the 15th of February, okay? Then around the 15th, I'm going to start grading. And if you don't have a completed folder, but I see something in there, unless you let me know that it's not done, or I can tell because there's basically nothing in it, I'm going to grade that one. Does that make sense? All right. And I mean, just one thing that's going to have to change this semester, just so you know. All right. You might say, well, that isn't fair. I'm trying to be fair. We can't keep doing this where, a few of you, and you know who you are. I'm not trying to look at anybody. I'm not accusing anybody. But, I give you your homework back. I gave you 38 out of 50. And I told you what the problem was. And then the next day you turn in, I fixed that stuff. Can you grade it again? No, I'm not going to do that anymore. I just don't have the time to do that anymore.
Adrian's not here today, and Kevin didn't know if Terry was available.
Okay.
He said put in a work order.
I'll do that during the break. Did he try it both from a regular machine and from his machine?
Pardon?
Did you try it? Do you have the virtual desktop loaded on your regular machine?
No, I don't have it up yet, but I can do it right now.
I just was wondering, maybe it's just some weird glitch or something like that. But I will do a work order. We'll take a break in a half an hour, and I'll do a work order then. All right. Is there anything I've said so far that anyone needs repeating? Repeated? Okay. All right. So we're in chapter 3. We're going to create a new project. So I may have some stuff open. I may not. Your machine may look like mine. It may not look exactly like mine. And if it does or doesn't, if yours looks just like this, that's great. It's not a problem. All right. Now, under recent projects, if you've never done anything, yours will be blank. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's go in and let's start a new Android Studio project. So we're going to click that first thing under the Quick Start. This looks similar to, but not identical to, all right, similar to, but not identical to the way we did this in Android. Okay? Now, yours may look similar to this, it may not. Again, the recommendation is still you use your reverse domain name. Some people last semester, if I gave you a program, and the program, let's just say, was called miles per gallon, as an example. There's some of you in here just took your domain name and made it MPG. And it's not really that big a thing. But what I want to be able to do is at least when we have advisory committee meetings, and we get people in here like Steve Zimmerman from Prent, who says to me, are you teaching using industry standards? I can at least say yes. And industry standards say that when you create this, you put in your domain name in reverse notation. And again, that's just the way that it's supposed to be done. All right? So, we've clicked the create button, and I think they want us to call this Android sample. I'm going to run them together. All right. Now, I may already have an Android sample. I don't remember what I called mine. Okay, so I'm just going to call mine Android sample 44 because I know I don't have one named that. If you want to just make yours Android sample, that's fine. You're not turning this one in. This is just so we can walk through some of the stuff that's in the editor. All right? Okay, make sure your project location, though. If it's not set, or if it's set incorrectly, click the ellipsis over here. Make sure that you set it to your H drive and whatever folder you just put out on your H drive. Whether you called it Android or 152, 156, or whatever you called it. All right? Hopefully nothing else in here needs to be explained, okay? I mean, we already talked about the domain. The package name is just going to be what you see in here, basically, JScott, whatever. And it's not even that important of a thing. The stuff is going to be created for you, all right? Notice that even though it's in gray, if I didn't like this, I could click the edit button here. I'm not going to. But I could if I felt the need to do that and change it, okay? All right. Everybody's good? We're all together, correct? You're not, John? Oh, okay. What's going on?
Get it started because it's missing some of the SDKs and stuff, so I think the problem is that he's got to migrate he ran out of space on the D drive, so he's got to migrate.
Because he wasn't in the class last semester to migrate over back of this stuff over to the C drive. Are you doing it for him or what?
Pardon?
Are you going to do it for him or walk him through it or okay? I mean, Mike, like I said, what's going to happen when we get done is that on the screen it's going to look like almost like a phone and it's going to say "Hello World" on it. Okay? It's a little text box. We're going to remove that text box and put in our own that says something else and change the color. We're literally putting in no code. All right? So even if it takes you or Luke, if you have to go back and redo this, you should be able to do it in 5 or 10 minutes. All right?
Yeah, Holly wasn't here, so she's got to migrate.
Okay. All right, so let's click the next button, and that brings us here. When you click this next button, the recommendation is, unless you're doing something really special, like you're doing a wearable or a TV or for your car, etc. I'm not saying this because this is so cool, but it is. I got an Android watch, so I hope eventually that I'm going to be able to grab that, and if I've got the drivers or whatever is needed in here, I'd love to run this thing on the watch. All right. All we should need is phone and tablet checked. That should be the only one the whole semester, to my knowledge, that we need to have checked. Now, last semester, I believe Mr. Wanda recommended that we choose the API 16, Jelly Bean. Now, I'm not going to click this. If you want to, you can. If you click this, it goes out to Android site, and it shows you the percentage of users who are still using each version of the operating system. So if you wanted to know that, you could click there. But notice it says, your app will run on approximately 88.7% of the devices that are active on the Google Play Store. What does that mean? Well, that means that, 11.3 it will not work on. Those people are running Android that's earlier than 4.1. All right? Those people should basically upgrade. Okay? So in other words, there's really nothing we need to change here. On yours, is yours already set here like this to Android 21 or 22 on their machines?
It should be.
Yeah. All right. And if for some reason you come in one day and we're going through this as a class, and let's say, because we're going to look at the SDK again like we already have, all right? But if I've upgraded to 22 and you haven't, It's not going to be that the world's going to fall in. You could either upgrade or just keep it at 21. I don't think there's going to be anything special that's going to be inside of Marshmallow that, boom, it's in your book and we're going to use it. I don't think that's going to happen. The funny thing is, when they sent me this and they sent me all this stuff, they've already sent me the book for Android 6. This is an Android 5 book, but I've got the PDF for 6. You don't.
You want us to change to 16?
Yes, change yours to 16. Thank you. Yes. And what happens once you've done this is it should remember it the next time you create a new project. This should be a one and done type of thing. The next time you come in here, you'll have a different project name, but this stuff, this page should be the same. All right? All right. So I'm going to click next again. Does this look familiar? This looks almost like the screen that we saw when we were working in Eclipse. The majority of the stuff that we do in here is going to be blank activity, which is the default. All right? You'll notice if you look, you can literally set it up with no activity. All right? If you were going to end up doing everything from scratch. We have blank activity. That's our default. We'll just keep that and we'll click next again. All right? This stuff should all look familiar to you. Now, if you want a little bit more on activities and what we just did, it's on pages 19 and 20 of your book. All right? Now, I'm going to tell you something. What you do with what I'm about to tell you is up to you. In the book, so if you look up on the screen here, in your book on page 20, I'm going to go to that page right here. In your book, they tell you to come in here and change the activity name, which for us is set to main activity. All right? If you want to set yours up exactly as it's shown in the book, that's fine. If you want to set yours up to just accept the defaults, that's fine. You can do it either way, is what I'm saying. We're somewhere in between. All right? And that's not that big a thing. The idea is, do you possess the skills where you can create an Android app? Not what the heck do you call it. That really and truly isn't all that important. All right? So I'm just going to leave it at main activity, activity main, main activity, and menu main. Again, if you want to change yours, as I said, to what's shown in the book on page 20, then do it. All right? So, what's left? Well, finish. Notice you can back up if you've made a mistake. All right? But I'm just going to click finish. And it's going to whiz and think about it, and whiz around a little bit and do this and do that, but it'll come up. Yours, again, may take a little longer than mine because I've already created 3 or 4 very little small apps on mine where you haven't done so. So if it takes a minute or two, don't worry about it. One of the later chapters that we'll go over after the break explains what every component that's in here is. So I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to wait until we get to that time. That said, just a couple things I want to say. This should look pretty doggone familiar to you because last semester when we were starting to do those, we did a couple simple Android apps as a class. That's pretty much what they look like. Remember, it is possible for you to write and create an entire GUI interface without writing a line of code. You can go into the XML here and set up whatever you want. You can add things. I could add a button in here if I wanted to and put it on the screen wherever I wanted to put it. I could put whatever text in there. I could do whatever I wanted to do. All right? So this, basically, this file is an XML file. And if you remember, because we're going to look at this after the break, that one of the files that's in there is called r.java. You might remember that from last semester. And I said you can open that file, never, ever, ever change it. Because that R file is what takes what's in your XML file and it converts it over to Java. All right? So if you start monkeying with it yourself, you're gonna blow up your program. It will not work. All right? And then notice, because that one came up for, at least on mine, by itself, and then the other file. Well, that should look pretty familiar from what we looked at last semester. This is the actual Java. And you'll notice, whether you think so or not, there's not much code in there. This is the stuff that's automatically created for you. All right? All right, if I pop back to here, you'll see over here, it's a little bit nicer than what we've seen before because it actually looks like a phone. All right? And there is some stuff you can do as far as moving this stuff around and whatever. I'm not going to worry about that stuff right now. I'm more concerned with just starting to go through the stuff that's in the book. All right. So I'm on page 21, modifying the example application. And it says, at this point, Android has created a minimal example project and opened the main window. All right. It says the newly created project and references to the associated files are created in the project tool window. Well, let's look at that first. All right. That project tool window is over here. All right. Do you see where it says, mine says Android sample 44, yours probably just says Android sample? If you click on that, it brings that up. All right. And even if that's not exactly what they show in the book, I want to show you that anyway. You can move around on your Android screen in a lot of different ways. All right, you can click a button here, you can choose an option there, you can do this, you can do that. There's menu options, there's some graphical stuff, all right? But I do want to mention one of the things that works in the background here. When you go in, if you remember this from Java, you may or may not remember it, but one of the things I talked about in the beginning Java class, all right, when you were working in beginning Java, the fact that Java is compiled first, then it's interpreted. And when it's compiled into a .class file, if you remember that. And then the interpreter takes over and runs that, converts it to machine language, boom, it runs it. All right? And it works with the Java virtual machine. All right? It's done differently in this language. The steps are the same. The naming conventions and some of the other stuff is different. All right? Just so you know that. But what happens behind the scenes, kind of the equivalent of the Java virtual machine in Android land, is something that's called Gradle. Is there a story behind that name? I don't know. I don't care. But anything that you see with Gradle, Gradle is the build tool that Android uses. Before it used Gradle, it used another tool that was called Maven. And the reason I'm telling you that is later when we go and we start to look at some of the stuff that's here, they'll show you references to Maven. All right, you can still do some stuff with Maven. The recommendation is you don't do anything with it. Okay? Now, if I take my mouse and I double click in there, you see what happened? How I moved it over? My mouse, it was over here. I just double clicked and now it's here. This looks very similar to what we did last year in Eclipse, except this didn't really look like a phone, all right? And the properties window wasn't as clean as it is now. But if you look in here, this is our component tree. So if we wanted to go in and change the type of layout, we could do that. If we wanted to go to and remove this, which is what we're going to do in a second, you can highlight that. And remember, if I want to remove this thing that says Hello World, I know it's hard to read from on the screen, I can either click on it right there and hit delete, or I can click on it here and hit delete. Either way will work. The stuff we did last semester in Eclipse will still work the same way as far as adding different tools, or adding different widgets and stuff. You can add them the same way. That stuff hasn't changed. If you weren't here for last semester, don't worry about it. Literally, it'll take you minutes to catch on. It really and truly isn't hard. All right. So they mention on the bottom of page 23, the first step to modify this application is to delete this text view component. So I'm going to click on it here. You notice when I click on it here, it highlights it here, or if I click on it here, it puts it in gray there. See that? So I want to click on it there. To me, that's the easiest. You may or may not agree. It doesn't matter. And I'm going to just hit the delete key, and it's gone. Okay? Literally, that's all I did. All right, then to get you used to using the stuff that's in here, what they ask you to do is to go in here and find the widgets category. And I actually like the way they did this. There's a reason for me doing this the way I'm doing it. Not because, well, you're doing it because that's the way they did it in the book. Hell no. If you remember last semester, it was real hard when you grabbed something and you put it on the screen, it basically went right there. It did, and you didn't really have any choice. Now we're going to move it right in the middle. All right? And to me, that's a lot nicer feature. That's one of the nicer features of this. So they tell you to, under widgets here, they tell you to find the large text object right here, large text. Grab it, drag it over near the middle, and notice how I've got the lines going in both directions, meaning it's pretty much centered horizontally and it's pretty much centered vertically. So now I'm going to let go. And there it is. All right? Now, hopefully it didn't do that too fast. Okay. And they mentioned you get the green marker lines, etc. All right, they show that on page 24. It says the Android Studio Designer tool provides an alternative way. So if you don't like doing it that way, there's other ways that it can be done. We could have also taken that widget that was right there. This is, Mike, this is for you and for Holly and for people who weren't here last semester. We could have also taken that tool and literally grabbed it and dragged it right on top of where it says relative layout, and it would have worked the same way. All right, so there's multiple ways always of doing the same thing, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. All right, so it says the next step is we don't really want it to say large text. So where it says large text right there, just take your mouse, put it on there, and double click. And if you might have to do it once or twice, but it should look like this when you do this. Okay? If it doesn't, raise your hand. All right? Now, you may or may not remember this from last semester, but one of the things we talked about from last semester was internationalization. All right, a term you may or may not have heard, you may or may not remember. But the idea is you should never actually type things on your controls when they're labels and text boxes. You should put that stuff in its own file. Why? Just in case your app, Zane was talking to me about an app he'd like to create, and maybe that app will go viral, and maybe it'll go worldwide viral, and somebody in France will want to use it. They wouldn't want the English words on there, all right? So we're going to be putting all the stuff for our labels and our text boxes into a file. You don't have to worry about it because we'll look at it after the break. That's called strings.xml that you might or might not remember from last semester, all right? By default, the strings.xml is a file that holds English, but you can make a strings.xml and you can make a strings/fr.xml to hold French or something like that. So that's the reason you should never, and in fact, if you go and leave that in here, what's going to happen is sooner or later it's going to come up with a warning. And it's going to tell you, hey, you really shouldn't be typing stuff in there directly. You should be using the strings.xml file. All right? We're going to do this, then we're taking a break. You all look like you need one. All right. Well, I do. So, it says we want to change the text that's in here to welcome to Android Studio. So, I'm just going to type it in. Welcome, not we come, welcome to Android Studio. All right? Do you notice something when you look on the screen right now? If you wanted to go in and actually change the name of that text view, you could do it here. Because not only do you get the text, you get the ID. See that? So if you wanted to do that, We won't worry about it. This is the only widget that we're putting on our whole screen. So leaving it with the name of text view is just fine. All right? All right, after you put that in, hit your enter key. Did you get a light bulb to the side like you see on the screen here? It's 1:50. Let's break now and come back at 5 after 2.